every once in a while he'll be like, he'll tag me in some jokes or screen thing up right now. What moving once? Oh, that? Oh, that one was pretty if somebody's got a screen open. It's not There's Chris. Same here. No, if you want to create any sort of animation, screen animation, I can actually set up and do. And as far as the graphics and stuff, Chris, the one bonus thing about being around on Pixels After Dark is all the artists know all the cool art programs. And one free one, it's so awesome. One of the things Ruby brought to my attention was Adobe Spark. You can get it on any of your phones or mobile or anything. It's a free app. You can pay for it, but it is free, and there are templates you can work from, or you can make your own, and it's literally like a simplified Photoshop that you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with. So check it out. Yep. Well, I'll tell you what, man. Adobe, they make some really great products, and if you want to hear some really cool ones, listen to Brandon Gamma on the last. No, you were there for most of it. At the tail end, he was suggesting a lot of programs and stuff when we were talking about Adobe. But we're not here talking about Adobe. Well, Chris brought up a really cool thing that I wanted to talk more about at some point about blue light, because that was really interesting what he posted. But our good friend Bailey has been working hard all week long with doing presentations and all sorts of stuff. You look so tired. Now, yeah. Yeah, he made an appearance already. So, yeah, we saw that. But you were talking about you did a presentation about like social interactions. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people struggle with it. We were talking last week with somebody that really wants to get out there, wants to interact with people at conventions because it's a perfect opportunity to see a lot of people you know all at the same time. But that being said, it can be incredibly overwhelming for one person to be in a setting like that they just can't bring themselves to do it. They'll start getting extreme anxiety, and just their own self stigma will get the better of them and they won't go. But the one person was talking about that if they're within a buddy system in that sort of setting, they do better. So it's almost like the person knew how to approach going into these like social settings and managing it by knowing what helped him going forward to achieve being, more sociable in public in an eye to eye setting. I mean, I know this for a fact.
Hide their emotions. So it's hard for a lot of people to pick up on social skills. And even more so with the changing in times come the internet and social media. The younger generations don't have face-to-face conversations anymore. They hop through any app, insert app here. But you can't get facial cues. You can't get subtlety within the conversation. So they lose how to interact with people. Something that you need to practice.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? Ivy, can you hear me? Just saying, I have no volume.
Oh, it looked. Joe might have figured it out.
Oh, did you get it, Joe?
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm new here. People put me in charge of things I should not be in charge of. I didn't have the audio capture on.
Ivy
Okay.
wants us to all say "y'all beautiful" at the same time.
Y'all beautiful. Oh, wait.
Y'all beautiful.
Beautiful.
That
Hi,
go
Ivy.
on? Funny.
All right, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. I was mentioning that the younger generations communicate through mobile.
Mhm.
And while mobile is a tool, it's also sometimes it can be a detriment where we need to develop tools to help. One of them is a game called Crystals of Kador, which is mainly used on facial actions and has been able to show to teach kids from 11 to 14 facial cues and facial expressions. So it shows how video games can help certain people.
Oh, absolutely. So my son's 18, and I gotta
Mhm.
tell you, I see a lot in him and his friends as far as they're all kind of socially awkward in a way, and but they even almost talk in shorthand. You know
Mhm.
what you know what I mean? Like, I think you're definitely losing a lot of that
Mhm.
social interaction and
So that game, Crystals of Kador, is uh, a civilization type exploration type of game where you need to be kind of like a diplomat. But you need to learn how each race functions and how they interact. Like we all have to do when we meet new people, where it be from a different part of the country, a different country, a different culture. Everyone has different mannerisms that they use. And what is socially acceptable in one area in the world may be something that is insulting in another area in the world. I remember talking to someone because for us in North America, having good eye contact is a sign of respect. But in uh, typically Asian cultures, certainly in Asia, having direct eye contact
Hmm.
is not a sign of respect, it's a sign of disrespect.
This is a cool game.
Hmm.
Pro social training with
Joe's
games.
off planes, huh?
Well, no, I just
No, no.
Goku name dropped it, and I put a
Yeah,
link
check it out.
into the chat, and I pulled it
Yeah.
up to look a little more, and wow, this
It,
is an
it's
impressive.
it's scientifically backed.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Who
I mean, this could.
who makes it?
I'm not sure who makes it.
It looks like a research and researcher and game designer by Doctor. Who? That's a lot of syllables. Dr. Stein and Dr. Davison developed this. So two researchers and medical professionals designed this from the ground up.
Fantastic art. Yeah, the art's
Well,
really
it's not
cool.
just the art; it's the pro-social
Yes.
training, you know,
Yeah.
that they're focusing on with it. And I mean, utilizing something like this in today's day and age of gaming has somewhere around 3 to 6 billion players. So there's that many gamers in the world. I
Hmm.
mean, utilizing something like this to try and break that barrier to show how much good gaming can do and have benefits,
Mm.
especially with socializing, not just in a like a verbal environment with like talk chats and this and this and that,
Hmm.
but actual face to face interactions.
Because with conversations, there are two facets. There are the verbal and non-verbals.
Yeah.
A lot of people believe in communication that it's just the words that we use,
Hmm.
but there's a lot more than that.
Mhm.
I mentioned the non-verbal. There are the way that we hold ourselves, the tone of voice that we have, the words that we choose to use. Like I mentioned, different parts of the country may have different meanings to certain words, or they may have a specific slang. All of those things influence the message that you want to give. And if we don't really pay attention to those things, it eventually just kind of devolves to a game of telephone. Remember playing the telephone game when you were a kid?
Yeah, and it changes by the time you get to the end. Yeah,
Why
Oh,
does
is
it
that?
change?
yeah, because everyone hears it a little bit differently. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think
Mhm.
we called it something different. It was like grapevine or
Grapevine.
something. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was it.
grapevine. Yeah.
I mean, that's an example in itself. I played Telephone, you played Grapevine, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I played both. How's that?
You're special.
Brag.
We
So
can't all
in
be
Boston, we have our own dictionary. For Christ's sakes, and
Yeah.
nobody knows what we're saying.
I don't try to.
Yeah. So. No, this is all really cool. I'm gonna
Is
go
it
down
a
that.
is it a digital game or is it a tabletop?
Yeah,
game?
it's a video game.
Okay,
Mhm.
well that's what I thought you said. I just wanted to clarify for.
There's also another app. I don't remember what the name is, but it's specifically designed uh, for people that are on the autism spectrum,
Mhm.
to help them understand social cues. But this is to be used within therapy. And I know a lot of mental health professionals are scared to use technology. It's not something that we are taught in school of how to implement and use technology within therapy. But now technology is so synonymous with the world that we need to use it. We need to use it to our advantage. And these types of games are just building blocks to something greater.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely people are breaking the ground. I mean, look at Destiny's Sword. I mean,
Mhm.
there's you hear of a lot more of them out there than you did before. And I mean, I just tagged you in that article about the psychologist going through the Zelda, going back through the story of that and the
Mhm.
psychology and the impact that had,
Mhm.
and Nintendo as a company, what they've always done. That was a really interesting panel. I
Mhm.
don't know if you got a chance to watch it or not.
I haven't gotten it's on my to watch list
Yeah.
on YouTube along with like 250 other videos.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was a pretty interesting panel. They had some of the writers up there, other people from the development of it, and it was interesting. So I think people are definitely talking about the technology and more and trying to bring it into that social environment or being more socially conscious about it, maybe.
And whilst technology is good, technology is useful, we need to learn to put down the screens and
Right.
interact with people in the world.
Yep.
Having social interactions face to face is very different than having social interaction through a screen.
Well, just the context of everything, right? I
Mhm.
so I could type you the same message and then say it to you in person, and you would take it two different ways because you're you're hearing my tone, you may be hearing a crackle in my voice, or which would give you the sense of maybe nervous or not, or there's so many different things. Body language, which I'm Italian, so my hands are flaring everywhere all the time. Uh, but through text, you're not going to see that. You're not gonna
You
pick
don't
up
get the
on.
nonverbals.
Right. Yep.
No, but social interaction just not only benefits, your own mental health or a person's, mental well-being, but also physical too.
Mhm.
Now,
It comes back to that social isolation that I always talk about. You can be, and it's something that um, a lot of my university students tell me that they can be at a party surrounded by people and still feel alone.
And isn't that the loneliest feeling when you're around people and you know that you still can't connect with them?
Yeah, they say I have a lot of friends
Hmm.
on Facebook or Instagram, but no one that I can really talk to, no one that I can open up to. So they're more acquaintances than actual friends.
And that's hard too, because I really don't know what I can add to it, just because it seems to go in a circle, just because today's day and age, so much is done by interactions online that a lot of people get caught in that. Well, I have 3,000 followers on Instagram and 2,400 on this, and I got friends all over, and I talk to this person, and blah blah blah. But when it comes down to it, not very many people, those people really have. And I'm not like, I don't want to single anybody. It's just an example. Don't really have very many people to actually open up and talk to. Like, not very many people to go, well, how was your day? To be honestly open and be like, you know what, it was pretty rough today. I got in an argument with this person, and I'm just not feeling right. I'm feeling kind of down in the dumps, or I'm depressed, or I have a lot of anxiety that nobody really knew about, because nobody really asked. It's just about an easier way to get somebody to feel more comfortable, and I think everybody needs somebody to talk to. And
I think
And
I was that example, Joe. I think talking about breaking these down into little steps, I've met most of my best friends on Twitter, and I needed maybe to have those interactions through tweets and likes and very subtle steps, small steps that I could control. I didn't know it at the time, but those were boundaries that I was setting. And now I have people that I've met on social media that are my in case of emergency contacts, because I do see them in my everyday life. I've made those real connections, but it may have taken years to get there. So I think there's beauty in it, but we can't rest on it. We can't let that be it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I rely.
It's
Go ahead.
it's a double-edged sword for sure. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's got massive
And-
benefits, but for every benefit there's a downfall. I mean, it doesn't end.
as adults, we can use social media in a way that's very different than a child or a teenager, just because our brain structures are completely different. The brain is only really mature around 25 years old.
We're getting an echo again. By the way.
Yeah, getting an echo. But it comes down to parent to monitor what their kids are doing online as well, and knowing what happens to their kids and how they interact with people online.
Well, that's breaking it down more to like adolescent.
Yeah.
And teens are the ones that are more at risk, because around 12 or 13 there is that coming of age where they move away from the parents and friends start to get more important, but they haven't learned the necessary social skills in childhood to really interact with people.
Yeah. Rachel, you're a counselor.
I am.
Yes, you are. Working with patients, do you see a good amount of people that have issues socializing face to face, that tend to be more receptive in like a online setting versus being face to face?
Yeah, I mean, I currently work with a very specific population of people. I've mentioned my current role as a counselor is to provide vocational rehabilitation counseling. So I'm helping individuals with all types of disabilities find and maintain employment. And 99.9% of the time, when it comes to helping people find employment, they need to have some sort of social skills because they're going to be networking or meeting with employers or meeting with new peers, and having the skills to be able to do those things is going to greatly enhance their ability to find competitive employment, something they're hopefully going to be doing for a long time. And so, part of my job is recognizing, well, which of my clients do and don't have this ability, or not really ability, let me rephrase that. Which of my clients do and don't have this skill? And how is it limited, and by what disability is it limited by, and by what symptoms? And so I step in to help them learn, new ways to do that. And initially, when meeting many of my clients, I always ask, what's your preferred method of communication? And I do that for two reasons. I do that so A, I know how to communicate with them, because that's important. But B, because it tells me a lot about, are you comfortable on the phone? Are you comfortable talking to a new person on the phone? Do you prefer email? I prefer email, and maybe that's because I am a millennial, right? So I grew up with a lot of communication, or digital communication. So it's just easier for me to say, just send me an email so I don't have to talk to you on the phone. But I do meet a lot of clients who will say, can you just shoot me a text? And I can't. I work for a state agency that does not provide me with a phone. So no, I cannot send you a text, and I, unfortunately, will not be texting you from my personal line. So I cannot send you a text, but I get that answer to social, to how would you prefer to communicate, more than any other form of communication, more than letter, which we can send, more than phone, and more than email. And it ranges across the ages, actually. So the clients who I would say are what we would think would be most likely to have social, limitations and interpersonal, communication and interpersonal limitations. As we mentioned, I have clients on all parts of the autism spectrum, and some of them are super social, and there's, yes, call me or whatever you want to do. And some are like, no, just send me an email. Like, if I can not communicate, that's fine. As little as possible is good. But then I know that there's a lot of rehab counseling that needs to happen there to help this client, recognize, how can I increase my interpersonal skills to help them communicate, because eventually they're going to have to talk to somebody. So that's like sort of the other side of the counseling that I do. I have a degree in mental health counseling. I'm just not really doing much of that right now. I'm doing this rehab counseling. So it's really opening my eyes to, when I start to do more mental health counseling with my career, it's opening my eyes to, well, like, here's really effective ways that we can help build skills. And that's why I'm so interested in this this game that you brought to my attention, because if it's something that is going to benefit a younger population, because that's how they connect, and that's how they will learn new skills, but they'll feel in a comfort zone even though they're changing, then that's great. So I guess that was a really long answer to your question, but it just sort of highlights, yes, the answer is yes. I have a lot of those clients who say very bluntly, which I appreciate when clients are blunt and honest, like, no, I have zero interest in communicating in any other way besides text or email. My job is to say, all right, well, that's fine, but we're gonna have to address that in order to help you find employment, and be okay with finding employment in that way. So
People will stick with what they're comfortable. Humans tend to repeat comfortable behavior. And for a lot of people, social interactions are uncomfortable situations. And like I mentioned, I don't want to be harping on millennials. I am one, so
there you go.
I can rag on my generation if I want to. But with all of this advent of technology, there are so many more options to communicate, which are less invasive.
Yeah.
Which is good, but also bad. which will make you more comfortable and not seek out other options or other avenues in communication. One, like the phone. How many millennials do you know, or people in general, that like to make phone calls? To
Very
call
little.
somewhere, even to order a pizza.
Nope.
Nope.
That's why they have apps.
There's an
Ha!
app for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think the only person my son talks to physically on the phone would be myself, his mother, or Sarah. I don't think he necessarily uses the phone for anything else.
So it's a
He's-
lost
he's-
skill.
He's on it all the time, but it's always text. But initially, when I typed out this topic,
Mhm.
it was which Rachel would be right up your alley. Was part of it was self-confidence. So if you're trying to get somebody to employment, they have to sell themselves, and to sell yourself, you have to have self-confidence, and that's something I think is very difficult for some people to obtain. And how do you get that skill to, how do you even learn that skill? I mean, it's a difficult thing to teach. It's a difficult thing to put in words. That was,
Yeah.
initially I typed out this topic and then I deleted it because I'm like, and Bailey nailed it. She's like, I wouldn't even, like, how do we even start? Like, it's such a,
I
But
could go like on
complex-
a 1 hour tangent on that, but I'm not gonna bore you with that. But in a nutshell, self-confidence, self-esteem is something that is built. As a child, so as a very young child, you're extremely confident because you don't know much more. So I have a toddler at home, and he's overly confident just because he's exploring the world. And the more he grows up, the more fear starts to kind of involve itself. But there was a tipping point in kind of our society where we put so much more emphasis on security and less on personal individual development. So I'm not saying that we should not make kids safe, but we've also made it a little bit too safe so they don't explore, or they don't make mistakes or hurt themselves, hopefully not too badly, to learn how to interact with the world.
I guess I never really thought about it that way. I mean, we're all born like super confident, like as confident as you could possibly be, because you don't know any better, right?
Exactly.
So maybe that's the
One
key.
thing I
Just
asked,
unlearn everything we know, you'll be confident again.
one thing I mentioned to a lot of the parents that I treat that have younger children or have teenagers, I ask them, "Hey, how old were you when you remember you could go play outside by yourself without supervision?"
Oh,
I remember 6.
oh, that was
7.
an open question. Oh, all right.
Yeah, I was about 6 or 7. I was playing outside by myself.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
all right. 5,
About right.
6. Yeah.
Would you let your 5-year-old go outside and play by themselves now?
No.
Well, we're in a different world, though. I mean,
Exactly. But humans haven't evolved that way.
yeah. I mean, now, so I'm the oldest of the group here, I think. So I'm not a millennial. I'm a Generation X, I think, or something. But, when I grew up, even though we were in back then, heavily settled suburban areas, it was, we had everybody had massive yards. The streets were, there was only maybe a dozen houses on the street, but the street was 3 miles long, that sort of.
Mhm.
So it was kind of common.
That's a long street.
Well, whatever, a couple miles, anyways. Um,
I get what you're
I don't-
saying. There was more
Yeah, I don't-
kind of open spaces, like everybody had big yards to play in.
right, but we were
large
more
areas.
isolated.
Yeah.
You know, you weren't exposed to as much as quickly, and you know, you were limited to your interactions. And if you went to somebody's house, there's always somebody keeping an eye on you, I guess.
But you explored the world. You explored yourself in
Yeah.
terms of gaining confidence. And with today's modern parent, as much as we want to help our childs grow and develop and be safe, we also cause a delay in reaching certain milestones. So the more kids grow up, let's say, if I remember correctly, the study had mentioned what a child should have had around the age of 6 or 7. Now they get around 12. Or they're 10 or 12 when they start reaching certain milestones when they should have gotten that when they were 5 or 6. You say, oh, 5 years, not that bad. But 5 years in the life of a child is massive.
Right.
Yeah, Erickson's not happy.
Yeah. Do you think that, again, social media plays a part in this? Because I know me personally, I'm overprotective. I'll be the first one to admit it. Christopher's an only child. I'm super overprotective. But also, I think we all are fed more information. Like, we know about the bad things that happen faster, quicker, and you know,
Yeah.
where
It
exactly
induces
they
fear
are.
response,
Yeah.
but the world is the safest it's ever been.
Yes.
Right. I mean, when I was a kid, if you didn't watch the news, and even if you did, you probably still didn't hear about half the things that happened. You'd have to read the paper, or like the information wasn't as easily accessible.
They still have those newspapers?
Every once in a
believe-
while.
Yeah. Sunday
So
one,
there's a
anyways.
movement going on now. It's kind of catching fire somewhere in the mid U.S. I'm not really sure exactly where it was again, but it's a movement called free range parenting.
I've heard of this.
What is it?
Free range parenting.
Free
It's like
range?
free range chicken.
Like chickens?
Yeah, you know, your kid. Like
Free
you
range
put a leash
parenting.
on your kids.
Oh boy,
but-
here we go. Are we
They
going
don't.
down a rabbit hole here?
But the whole movement of free range parenting is to let the kids go play outside, and if they get hurt, you mend what they hurt, and then they explore the world in the way kids should.
And then they begin to practice those skills that we then need as adults.
Exactly. They start learning those skills when they should be learning those skills.
Now,
Funny. When you Google it, it's free range chicken and then free range parenting.
now
Sorry.
going ahead a little bit with today's day and age, focusing more on the Generation X and millennials and the adults of society right now that maybe were once social because they were interacting, almost forced to interact in
They had to.
social settings with school and family, this and that. Well, now they've moved out, went to college or school or whatever. Now they're on their own, and their social interaction is now a percentage of what it used to be. Most of the communication is done online in some form of text or whatever have you, or voice in a game. What would you suggest a person that is struggling socially to help reinforce their social skills, so to speak? Like, I think,
One
Bailey,
thing,
the thing that you were, the presentations you were talking about touched on this, didn't it too?
Yeah, because we have to look for opportunities to practice things and
Mhm.
safe places. And we try to look for, like in vocational rehab, that's a really good example of places where we have to practice things over and over. I like to think of maybe picking out a place to volunteer.
Mhm.
And those steps towards doing something like that can be small, can be getting up the courage to go into the place, and then filling out that paperwork, talking to the receptionist. It doesn't have to be, I'm going to go in and do this once a week right away.
Right.
But every time you go into the Humane Society to cuddle the cats, you're interacting with people too. And
Mm.
so beginning those small steps, getting into something that you enjoy where there's forced interaction, but not a ton, um, gives you a chance to practice those things so that when you're out among other people, you can then generalize your skills.
Hmm.
Yeah,
That's
and
really
I
good.
guess yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you could also force yourself instead of maybe going through the drive-through, you get out of the car and walk inside and tell
Mhm.
yourself you're gonna say this, and this to the cashier or something. I mean,
hmm And sit in the restaurant maybe while you eat it. That's something that we really work on with some of our consumers is let's go do other things out in public too, because thinking about being comfortable living as part of the community, not always just talking to other people. It's
Mhm.
being in that space too.
You can learn all of the skills. So you can learn communication skills, reflective listening, but you have to practice.
Yeah.
And going into public, putting yourself out there into uncomfortable situations builds confidence.
hmm
Nothing's ever accomplished within your comfort zone, right?
Mhm.
Right.
yeah.
And not saying that we would just thrust someone into a situation that is completely outside of their comfort zone. You progressively introduce them to something um, as time goes on. So you do exposures where you know that you're not setting them up to fail, you're setting them up to succeed.
Right. There's
And
having
really
a
you're
positive
growing that.
reinforcement. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're growing your comfort zone. It's not so much that you're having to exit it every time, but the zone in which you're comfortable is expanding.
Yeah, I like that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, do
I,
you... Go ahead, Chris.
yeah, I mean, yeah, you could just start off with something small and just keep building up, like you said. I mean, it could be, yeah, anything. I hadn't really thought about it, I guess, in that sense that you can almost set yourself like a chart or a goal sheet, I'm gonna get through saying this much or, you know, reaching this concept with this person or something like that.
Yeah, like
Uh,
tomorrow, my one goal on my yellow post-it is going to be I'm going to reach out to Radical on the phone tomorrow instead of through email, and I'm going to talk to her and communicate with her. That's my one goal, is to focus on communicating with one person out of the format that you usually would communicate through email, text based, online, to being more verbal. And that could be a manageable goal to building up to, okay, well, we're in the same city, she does help me with, counseling and everything. I'd like to set a meeting face to face, or I'd like to, I haven't gone to the movie theater in 2 years. Hellboy just came out this weekend. It could be a little, use that. It's not the same thing, but it's still being
They're
social.
building block.
Right.
Yeah. I think the
And one
small
thing as
step.
well.
Oh, go ahead.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead. That's
No,
okay.
no, go ahead.
Here, I'll flip
I
a
was
coin.
just- Okay, I'll go anyway. No, I think, and we keep saying the same thing, but it is so important.
Yeah.
small steps, I mean, really is the key to anything. But in the realm of social conversation, and just being more interpersonal, and I say two things to clients all the time. I say small steps a lot, because small steps have helped me deal with different things in my life. But it's not small steps to do it to be more interpersonal because you have to be more interpersonal. It's taking small steps to be more interpersonal because you want to be more interpersonal and you want to feel comfortable doing it. And as humans, we're social beings. We didn't get this far by being by ourselves all the time. So most people want to feel comfortable being interpersonal, they just don't know how. And most of the individuals I've talked to, both in my professional and personal life, who start to look at their to-do lists not like one giant activity, but small things to do, once a day, or you do two a day, or whatever you're going to do. They've said, like, wow, that actually made me feel better about what I needed and wanted to get done, but also look at all these things that I did, and I feel confident and comfortable moving forward doing things that are similar now in the future. So yeah, that's all I had. I just wanted to throw that extra tidbit in there.
Yeah, I think you get when you can get to that point, I think you get a much better sense of self-pride and accomplishment when you do something face to face. I mean, that's maybe part of the definition of confidence, but to me, it's a bigger achievement, when you do pull something off, like a job interview or something like that in person, and put yourself out there.
I speaking personally, man. When it comes to like social interaction face to face, I mean, it can always bring a lot of anxiety and anxiousness to someone. I mean, you're nervous talking to somebody because you don't know how the conversation is really going to go. You could say something, wrong. You don't know. You're just nervous. But after you're done talking and it's like, oh, it was so great meeting you and everything, or having this conversation, when I leave that conversation, most times I get a really positive feeling about just talking, to somebody, like that. When I saw Chris a couple weeks ago, me and Chris had a lot of conversations, but I left that night. Chris dropped me off at the hotel, him and Sarah, and I had a really positive experience going out, and that was the first time that I went out socially in public in exactly a year. I don't really go out very much. I go to work. I socialize in a professional setting, but I don't go out, for just my own personal time for fun. So when I was out in Boston, going out with friends that I primarily interact on Discord, in games, online, and seeing them face to face, getting a big old hug from them and everything, and spending a few hours with them, I left that night with a very extreme positive feeling from it. And I mean, it can be something that is very very good overall. But
I think once you realize that you're on the same level as the person that you're talking to, I mean that's where the kickback comes from, right? Is your natural fear that somebody else they're better than you, right? Is that or they're gonna think less of you, maybe.
I think that's it. I think we all kind of inflate what people think about us in our mind and how much they're judging us, because I mean, listen to us. We are all so worried about what we sound like. I can't remember the last time I thought somebody else was awkward in a conversation, because I'm always worried about whether it's me.
Right.
And so if we think about, other people are walking around this life like this too, I hope that can free up some brain space for some people.
Yeah, what's the old trick? Everybody's in their underwear. I mean, is that?
I've definitely come out of conversations like, Geez, I hope that person was not listening to me because I, I just said a lot of nothing. And then, I think to myself, that person's probably thinking the same exact thing. And I really have no idea what they just said because I'm worried about what I just said. So, and I've even used a funny line like that with clients, and it helps to normalize sort of what they're going through. And we're all worried about what we sound like, so you shouldn't be worried because you sound just fine. So,
Mhm.
Unless you listen to yourself over the phone or on a recording.
no,
I think
I can't
that's the
listen to
hardest
myself.
part.
awful. We keep talking about you need to practice and we should practice, and you have to start somewhere. Um, and this is going to be excellent professional advice, guys. I think we often underestimate
I'm
the
holding on.
the, the value of fake it till you make it. You know,
Oh yeah.
Fake it
you
till you
have to
make it.
practice. You
It's
have to
true.
practice, and you have to realize that most people are out there faking it too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if you can fake it, if you can act as if one time, then you'll have a little practice on that skill the next time.
Well,
That's
I'm
good.
actually going to touch
That's
on
sound.
that as well. Is for people to also not judge others when they're trying to be more social. So I live in a province that is officially bilingual, so French and English.
Hmm.
However, French is the minorities. About a third of the population, a quarter to a third, is French, and around three quarters, two-thirds are English. So a lot of the French learn English right from the get-go from TV and interactions, but a lot of people that are English speaking don't really have the opportunity. And I often hear some, not everyone, but some people that are French kind of laugh or snicker at the English person that's trying to speak in French. And rather than laugh at them, you should be praising them to that they are trying to interact with people in French.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't even.
Just be
I'm.
accepting and just patient with people. Essentially, when somebody is trying to reach out, don't blow them off in a conversation or be reinforce them, reinforce their social skills. I mean, you might have one conversation with them today, but tomorrow the conversation can go a different direction, or they could be more confident speaking on their own, just building their own confidence. I'm primarily thinking around the lines of somebody trying to speak French in your province. They went back to their B&B, listened to Rosetta Stone for a couple more hours, and then emerged in the morning to breakfast, and they're speaking a lot better because that interaction they had with you kind of gave them a little bit of a confidence boost, interacting in French instead of defaulting to English, and they're trying it again at breakfast instead of coming out at breakfast speaking English, giving up on French. You reinforce them positively.
With any language, you need to practice it. And people will tend to default to what's more comfortable because seeing someone struggle is uncomfortable for everyone. So if someone that is English native speaks French and you can hear that they're really struggling, a lot of the French population will automatically default to English just to make the situation that much easier.
Yeah.
Or you're almost kind of doing a disservice to that person. You're trying to make it easier, but in terms you're telling them that, okay, your French is not that great, so let's talk in English to make things easier. And there comes the self-confidence and the likelihood of them not trying to speak French again. And I'm sure this is kind of universal for any language or any type of interaction.
I think that's very true. We see a lot of opportunities for people to enable others. So
Hmm.
it's our instinct to just step in and do for.
Mhm.
I was working with someone the other day where the only available checkout lane was the self checkout, and that was very intimidating. Um, and I could have easily just taken the things and scanned them, and we could have gone about our day, but that wasn't going to help them.
Right.
That wasn't going to build a skill. That wasn't going to move them forward towards their goals. It would get us down our day quicker, and it would show them that I didn't think they were capable of completing this task.
I
Yeah.
see that a lot with what I do because, we're trying to help people find employment. I'm not even trying to help people find employment. I'm providing guidance and counseling so that they understand and manage their disabilities. But, they're trying to find employment in the long run. And if I had a client come in the other day who needed to use, we have a office computer that our clients can use, and she wanted to fill out an application, and I said, yeah, sure. I have to sit in here with you, just because of the rules or whatever, but just let me know if you need help. And maybe like halfway through this application, I realized that I was doing it for her. I wasn't typing anything, but I was doing it for her. And I was answering all the questions, and I was telling her what to write. And yeah, she needed help with understanding what was written. She has an intellectual disability, so being able to understand some of the questions was difficult. But I just went into like, here's the question, here's what the answer is, and about halfway through, I said, you know what? Why don't you go ahead and just complete the rest? And if you come across a question that you don't understand, I'll read it out loud. She was understanding things better when she heard it, but I realized that I was doing exactly that. My fix-it counselor hat went on, which is like almost sometimes the worst hat to wear as a counselor because you're just there to help them fix themselves, not really do it for them. And so I was like, wait a minute, I'm not doing anything for this person except for I'm not doing anything. So by at least her doing half of the application herself, she was able to learn a new skill at the very least. So
And if you take that interaction that you had, and you extrapolate that to most of the kids now, is life. That's how their parents are now. Is
yeah,
rather than push you to solve the problem, I'll fix it for you.
right. I'm
There's
totally on board with.
there's the scandal going on in the U.S. now for the universities.
Yes.
So you get in because they kind of had the back door rather than going in on merit.
Right.
Well, it's not just within universities. You can see that in most schools where kids are pushed along and they're not learning the skills because either teachers or administrators are scared of the parents.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get on the topic of schools and not pushing the right things, the whole handwriting thing drives me nuts, which again goes back to social media and typing. Christopher's writing's atrocious. I mean, like, when
Like a doctor.
Do you want to see mine?
it's atrocious. My writing's impeccable when I put my mind to it. I mean, my fingers don't work as well anymore, but, I used to get points off for writing. Handwriting was like a major to do,
I embody the doctor stereotype with bad handwriting.
Oh, you're one of those, huh?
Yes.
But
Although I can still read mine. Oh.
There you go. That's good.
But also back to like the statement Bailey said, "Fake it till you make it." We use that in my business all the time, right? So because we get hired, and if you want to make money, you got to get the job done. Well, our business is changing constantly. There's new products, new things we've never done. So sometimes we just go, "Oh yeah, all set. Yeah, we can do that." You have no idea what we're doing. We just get the wood and make it happen.
On the job. You
Yeah,
take the time.
we
You
don't have a
experiment.
choice. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, it's good in that sense because we need to make a living, so it literally forces us.
But it forces you to be out of your comfort zone.
Yeah,
And you're learning new skills that you can later implement in other aspects of your life.
exactly, and that's exactly how we get from point A to point B. So we take what we've learned in another area or how we did something else and apply it to this new problem or this new product. And that's, you know, that's how me and my guys, how we'll approach something, you know? Well, we usually do it this way. Let's take it that far until we hit a roadblock, and then we'll find another way around it, sort of thing. I guess you could apply that.
Mhm.
I never really thought of applying it in a social aspect, but you know, I guess you could, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I still love. I'm still hung up on how Radical was able to recognize working with that one person when to have the other person step in to start learning that new skill. You know, to fill out half the form herself instead of just being the guy. Okay, okay. Here's the question. What do you? Okay, well, you're gonna need to. Yeah, well, I'll put this. Instead, you stepped in about 10 questions in. Okay, your turn. You know, you. I. That's the. I don't even know how to word it right now. It's been a long day. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Been a long week.
It
I
has.
appreciate the sentiment.
It has. I'll complete my full thought in the next 5 minutes. No.
Well, I mean, it kind of goes to the concept of how we all learn differently, right? So some of us
Mhm.
learn visually, others are, you know, verbally. It's the way the brain works, correct? Am I
Mhm.
correct in saying that?
Yeah.
Now,
Which I know there's a test for that, right?
There's many, I'm sure.
There are many.
I think we talked about that with the ADHD.
Yes, I remember that being touched on. I think we covered this topic pretty good, and we can go on for a while. But just to save us going into a circle or anything,
Yeah.
we're already just 5 minutes over an hour. I'm trying to keep it kind of right around an hour, maybe a little bit over. But I just wanted to bring up to touch on the topic real quick of the blue light and how it affects
Oh, yeah.
mental health.
Mhm.
I'm gonna see if I can
Oh, yes.
pull up the picture, but because Chris earlier today
Mhm.
pulled up an image that was kind of like a diagram. Let me see if I can. I'm gonna save this and then send it over to that so I can pull it from there, put it on the screen.
Yeah, so it affects headaches, migraines, eye fatigue, has disruptions with sleep, and it can damage your retina. But blue light, typically what I talk about it with my clients is with regards to their sleep. Because a lot of people will look at their phones prior to them going to sleep, and it affects their sleep. While there has been studies that show that yes, blue light has an effect, it's not necessarily the quality of that light; it's the quantity of that light.
Can I be devil's advocate for a second?
Sure.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Okay.
What if it's about the lifestyle and the implications of being online that much and not the light itself?
Well, what are all
that's
the
another thing as well.
all the social media sites are what color?
Blue.
They're blue. Except for Instagram. They moved away from blue. But yeah.
Well, now a lot of like Twitter has a night mode or a dark mode.
Mm.
I
Y'all are in
utilize
right?
dark
But they-
mode all the time, even on my cell
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And most phones now have even computers. So on iOS, it's called Night Shift. There's also a free application that you can download on Windows and Mac that's called f.lux that will change the hue of your screen with the
Yeah,
time
they-
of day.
Yeah, they're building monitors with
Yes,
it
that
built
is true.
in now. I've been looking at the glasses you can buy. They sell gaming glasses. Gunner's one of the big companies
Mhm.
out there that's doing them. They have an amber lens, and then they also have a clear. I think the clear does like a 35% less blue light.
Yeah.
They're reasonably priced. Um, Christopher was taking yoga in for one of his classes, and that was one of their activities was to try to not look at the phone for 30 minutes when they wake up, because that's going to change your mood going through the day. That blue light triggers something in your brain.
It's the blue light, but also what typically they're looking at, which is
Mhm.
social media
Right.
and the impact.
Yep.
And it's one thing that Simon Sinek had mentioned. He has a whole interview on it that is very powerful. A lot of people will look at their phone when they wake up before saying good morning to a significant other.
Yeah.
Right.
Just think about that for a second and the impact that has on the individuals.
Hmm.
Well, you just totally listed me off, because at 4:45 in the morning, 5 o'clock, my alarm goes off on my cell phone, because I find my cell phone's more dependable as an alarm clock than my actual alarm clock.
Yeah,
The
that's
thing
what I
hates
use.
me.
Of course.
Twice
It's on
twice
the
a year, it's
nightstand.
wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's on the nightstand right next to me. That's in my
Yeah,
phone goes
but
off.
I always grab my phone as soon as the alarm goes off. I pick it up, turn off the alarm, and the first thing I do is it's notifications. I get an email, a text, or something like that in the middle of the night while I was sleeping, and I usually look at that while I'm like one eye half open, just like that's so, and then I get up and get ready for the day and everything, and then before I leave I usually say bye.
But
Oh, thank God I'm not the only one.
But think of the mindset that it's creating when you wake up. And I'll admit that I'm not much better either. It's okay, what happened? What do I need to be aware of? But that creates a tone for your day.
Yeah.
Rather than getting up, relaxing, enjoying the moment, it's you wake up, you go.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
His suggestion was actually, rather than looking at your phone, get up, do whatever you got to do, but then go directly outside and
Mhm.
just
Drink some water.
stand on the porch or
Yeah.
take
Make
deep
yourself a cup of
breaths.
coffee and go drink it on the porch.
Mhm.
Yeah, just
I
kind of
do.
get yourself recentered with the environment around you before you dive into the environment digitally. And the idea between the blue light was it's a trigger and just triggers your brain to go into that social media
Mhm.
kind of
Mentality.
habit,
Yeah.
you know.
Totally.
And we know that it's specifically detrimental to under 25-year-old
Right.
because social media is highly addictive. It releases dopamine, which is something that's completely natural. We all have dopamine, but social media in itself will release high quantities of dopamine.
Right.
And it can become very highly addictive. That's why we regulate smoking, gambling, um, drinking, so when they're older, when their brains are more developed. But there's no real age limit on social media.
I wrote a whole paper on this in grad school.
Mm.
There's a lot to say about addiction to social media. I have to
Mhm.
say. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking
But
of
that's
smoking,
another rabbit.
they just
That's
raised-
another
Another
rabbit
night
hole.
on our next episode.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh,
just-
I'll put that on post-it.
They
Mhm.
just they just raised the age here in Mass too to buy cigarettes. You have to be 21.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah. You have to be
Who knows if
21.
there's a law here in Florida about it? I have no idea.
Yeah.
I thought they just gave them out in
It's
Florida.
been 18 as long as I can remember. But they just raised it. But it's something about I don't think every town has to participate. but I know the towns surrounding me all are. So
I think here it's marijuana, cigarettes, and alcohol is 19, if I remember correctly.
yeah, now pretty much everything here is 21.
Except for voting.
Correct. That'll probably be next.
That's also a different topic. Just kidding.
But back to the blue light. The only other thing was not doing it at night because it does trigger your brain to stay awake.
Yeah,
Yep.
That was a big thing.
correct.
And I could go into a whole deep dive in that, but I don't want to ramble on for another half hour.
Yeah, yeah. It's difficult for
save it.
me because I can't sleep without a TV. So my TV has to be on or I can't sleep. But it's a catch-22. I don't necessarily look at it.
You
It
listen
just
to
has
it.
to be, yeah,
Same.
it just has to be
All right.
on, and the flashes, I guess, maybe. But I
Okay,
can't
well,
sleep without a TV.
Have you tried listening to a podcast rather than
Yeah.
a TV show?
I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because the room is too dark. But like I said, I don't necessarily look at it all the time.
Mhm.
But it just, and it's been that way as long as I can remember.
See, I'm
And it-
pretty close to that. I have to have a fan on,
I have to have a fan on.
even if it's an Alexa and a fake fan. You know, there's a fan on. If there,
Fan Lexa.
I'll ask ambient noise. You know, if I forget or something, I have an Alexa. There's a few of them throughout the house, but I'll just say Alexa ambient noise, and fan is what I always go to, and it's the sound of a box fan. But I always have to have a fan, even in the wintertime when I had my first apartment, middle of winter, and I was poor. You know, I couldn't keep the heat up, so it would be like 57 in the house in the winter. I would put a blanket or a shirt over the fan and just leave the fan running. You know, but that was just so it didn't blow cold air and make it even, you know, more cold in there. But I had to have that sound on. If I don't
But
have it,
that's-
I'm up all night.
That's comfort. We all have those things that make us feel comfortable and enable us to relax.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a distraction, right? Because otherwise I get in my own head. And once I get in my own head, forget about it. It's a vicious cycle.
And I don't know how people can sleep with socks on. I just don't get that.
Who does
Then
that?
But
Before we
but to
People
touch
do it.
on your
You always sleep with socks. You guys
Oh,
are the weird
gosh.
ones.
I
no,
gotta
it-
leave. I gotta
no. But
Sarah
to
would
touch on
agree
what you
with all
mentioned,
guys.
Chris, being in your own head, a lot of people will use those types of distraction as emotional avoidance,
Mhm.
and then it becomes a crutch.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It's a very fine line between escapism and emotional avoidance.
Hmm
Ooh,
Bingo.
yeah.
Yep.
There's your nugget for the night.
Yeah.
Oh, we went there.
That'll have me thinking for sure.
I'll put that on your postage.
If you saw my desk right now, I
What
have.
time are you calling me tomorrow, man?
Yeah.
It'll be early. No.
Oh, please
I
don't. Then.
I have
She
so
can't
many
call you because she
Post-its.
doesn't have a project phone. So.
I
Yeah.
I'll send her one. No. It'll be a track phone. Nothing fancy. Old school flip, but it'll be something.
I
I'll
miss
go to
those.
Walmart.
They didn't have blue light when I was trying to go to sleep.
Oh right. Yeah. Now that I
Well-
think about it, that's like a new smartphone thing, really,
Yeah.
right?
Oh yeah.
It's the LEDs.
Hmm.
No.
Yeah. That. Oh yeah, you're right. Because that's part of the article. It's the industry is pushed that way because it's the efficiency of the
Mhm.
light.
You can
Makes
do more
it-
with LEDs, and now with the OLEDs.
Right.
But that's why they have, like I mentioned, the f.lux or the night shift, where it will change your screen from a blue hue to a red hue.
Right. Yeah, I just set Sarah's up to do it automatically from like midnight to 5 or something like
Yeah.
that. But
The
Or
new
10 to 5.
iPhones and the new MacBooks have what are called True Tones, that they have an ambient light sensor on the phone that will change the color temperature of your screen depending on the surrounding light.
My monitors do that. But
Yeah.
most smartphones nowadays have blue light filters where you could
Yep.
take
Yeah.
the blue light out of it, or at least tone it down.
Yeah. So one thing I recommend to a lot of people is if you do need to use your phone before bed, put that blue light filter on.
It takes a while to get used to, but and I haven't mastered it yet. It kind of aggravates me, but I have to start doing it because I am one of those people that is now finding myself to have. I'm starting to develop eye problems. My eyes are getting very tired. I'm having a harder time seeing, reading, not and which I never did before. And headaches, that sort of thing. And I've narrowed it down. It's got to be all the screen time.
Well, to help cut down on the headache, we're at an hour and 20 minutes. Sleep deprivation will give you a headache. I think, yeah, it's 11:30 here. I think that's late enough right there. Anybody have anything last they'd like to say before we sign off? I mean, Bailey already dropped the nugget with that line right there that I already. I mean,
Doesn't get any better than that.
yeah, that was a good one.
Bailey, we'll go out on her.
I'm
Go out
so
on Bailey.
tired. I barely remember what I said. So that's a really good thing to wrap this up.
I'll make a graphics for it and I'll post it on social
There
media
you go.
tomorrow.
Exactly.
Bailey will be a meme by midnight.
Woohoo!
Is that cool?
All right. Well, thank you all, everybody,
Thank
for
you,
coming
guys.
on and chatting
Thank
with
you,
us
everyone, for
together
joining.
tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody, for in the
Have a good
chat, and Brian Monkus for the raid earlier. That was
Yeah,
awesome.
second
too.
time in a row, I think.
Mm-hmm.
He raid Monday night.
Nice.
Yeah. If you ever want to see any amazing art, go check out Mr. Monkus.
He's putting out some really good
Ryan.
stuff with the colors. The Saladin and the Oryx are amazing.
Yeah, he does a lot of video game characters and this and that. And I'll tell you what, if he was my mortgage broker, I'd be really happy because I would. He's an incredible artist, but he does that for his passion. That's really awesome. But anyways, everybody have a good night.
See you later.